Hey everyone, let's get into some of the special effects from Electrolyte. Alright, so let's start out with this effect here where he's zapping some of the cans as he's testing out his powers. So all we had available to us is what was already in Adobe After Effects. So I knew that whatever I was gonna do with lightning, it would have to be quick and flashy because all we have is the advanced lightning effect here in After Effects, and you just apply that to a black solid. But this is only a 2D element. So if you put this into 3D space and rotate it around, it just looks, you know, flat. So it was kind of disappointing not to have anything available to work in 3D. But regardless, even if what you have has limitations, you can still get it to work. All right, so the first thing that we did on set was we actually threw a sparkler inside the can. So here's our director, Lauren. She just tossed it in there. We tried using some bigger fireworks that went pow, 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 but they kept melting the fishing line that we were using to yank it. So then she just, at one point, just gave it a good yank, and it pulled the can over and brought the second can with it, which I was very thankful for. And this was my favorite shot because the can actually spun a couple of times, which was really cool. So we had the fishing line wrapped around this metal beam back here, and then it pulled over. And if you look carefully, you can see the fishing line wobbling there. And not to mention her shadow, which was disappointing to get in the shot. So that's why I stuck in a mask, but I was able to take that out fairly simply, and but then as the sparks came over, I wanted to keep those. So we could have, like, thrown in some sparks, but then we got this cool light that lit up from the inside. That would have been very difficult to do if we just used Action Essentials. So, and then I kind of threw the mask up there to hide the rest of that. So moving on to the lightning here. So the first thing that I had to do after you just toss the advanced lightning onto a black solid, and it's as simple as that. And then we just changed the color of it. So the first thing that we had to do was go to connectivity state and alt-click on the stopwatch to bring up the expressions, and then I had to write in the word time. I don't know why After Effects just didn't simply add this already, but without it, the lightning just appears stagnant. Let me delete these keyframes. And it just doesn't move. It doesn't move. So after you add in the expression of time, then it regenerates the lightning. It still maintains kind of the same path that it starts out with, but it still forks kind of in different directions and whatnot. So the first thing that I did is I went to the next frame and make sure that you have the advanced lightning selected, otherwise things disappear. Let me turn off that 3D layer. And I just followed the lightning up with the can. That way it kind of looks like he's still zapping it and that there's still some connectivity with it. And then I changed the glow opacity to make it a bit dimmer, and that seems a little too much. There we go. And then I brought it back a bit, not all the way back, so it started as bright, dimmer, and then a little bit brighter again. So, and this just kind of, you know, looks okay by itself, but needs something more. So that's why I decided to put in a lens flare. So let me turn on that layer here. And this is just simple as, you know, dragging in a lens flare over on the right from the, onto a black solid. So, and what I did for this is I just simply dragged it along with that, with where the lightning hit. And then that really helps to sell that, oh, it's really impacting this. So, and then I also changed the brightness a bit. So I brought it down from like 100, and then I brought it back up so that it looks like it's kind of getting bright again. So this is what makes it look flashy. So when it comes in, there. So we've got something that looks a bit better, and it looks like sparks are flying out because, oh man, it really zapped it. So that's really all that I did. Oh, and the lens flare, I changed it to the 105 prime. We're actually using a 100mm prime, so it kind of makes sense. But that's pretty much the one that we used for each of them because it also kind of is blue. The default one is this one, And without this hue saturation to affect it, there's some red in there, and we wanted to save red for when Vince uses the lightning in the end. So we used the 105 millimeter, and then we also desaturated some more reds because it's blue lightning. It would have been nice if the sparks kind of had a blue feel to them, and I really could have probably masked and changed the color, but we didn't go to that extent. All right, so, and I did the same thing for these layers right here. And then, so really, it's just 6 frames of lightning. That is a quarter of a second. And that's really all that it needs. So, and then all you got to do is put the zapping sound effect on there, and that's what sells the shot. And so the nice thing about this setup is it was very easy to just copy and paste it onto another layer. Just move the in and end points of it. So this is what we were doing for the one shot here where he zaps it. And this one just has 2 lens flares, one on each side, and they just get brighter and darker. So it was very easy to do because there were a lot of them that had to be done. Now this effect here took me a lot more time to do, and I mean, it seems fairly simple. Now probably what would have really saved up the time is if I had just simply masked out and then motion tracked a solid onto there. But instead, what I did is I went in and used the roto brush on this. So if I go to the layer itself, you can see here that I just rotoed out painstakingly because I didn't know at the time that if you are trying to roto out an uncolor corrected shot, then it makes it a lot harder on After Effects because it doesn't know exactly what, even though that all the data is still there, I think it just doesn't know what contrast level to narrow in on. But if you go in and put a curves over it to stretch out the contrast that you need where you're not blowing out the highlights or crushing the blacks or anything, then that really helps it. So that probably amplified my problem there, but that was the strategy that I ultimately ended up using. Let me go in here and turn on this layer style so you can kind of see what exactly was rotoed out. So then it was just a matter of applying the layer styles of an inner glow and an outer glow, and I just went in and then just tweaked these parameters much the same way that I tweaked the brightness. And let me turn off the flares here. So without the flares, it just kind of looks like this, like something's glowing out of his hand there. So let me turn off the color overlay, and then you can kind of see what that looks like without it. So the advantage of the rotor brush is it tracks with his hand movements, but really, it would have been so easy just to open up the tracker tool and then to just, you know, track the motion. So another element that we added to this is I added some smoke from Action Essentials. So we got Puffy Smoke 01, and without with the rotoscoping of his hand, you can see that the smoke comes up nicely, and really it's just sitting right on top of the video layer. So the mask, you can kind of see the mask and the smoke, it jerks up when his hand completely covers it. So without the video layers, this is what the smoke looks like. So it just jerks up, and I found that's what worked nicely. I could have tracked it on there, but then tracking to put in smoke only really helps if there's camera shake. But if his hands are actually shaking, then the smoke is going to go up and down. That would look kind of odd. So, but anyway, I went in and rotoscoped out his hand, which also took forever. And so this time I had to use the rotor brush because there was so much transformation going on with the 2D layer that it just would have taken forever. So with the color overlay on, you can see what I had to track, and even I could have tracked around his hand, but at that point there was no smoke peeking out, so it didn't matter. So the rotor brush, and it was very painstaking process because, again, it was flat footage, and the toast looked a lot like his hands. So I went in painstakingly and rotoscoped it all out. But so once you slap on that layer on top of it with his hand, then it looks like the smoke is actually emitting from the toast. So that's how I got that effect. The roto brush is being very finicky right now, otherwise I'd show you exactly what I had to go through, but it's I haven't quite mastered the roto brush because I can do it pretty well when I start off doing it, but coming back to it later, all these problems come in. It's kind of finicky like that. Alright, now let's move on to the part where we zapped the phone here. Now this was actually an old phone of mine that I bought off of someone and because I just needed some screws, because I had just taken apart my iPhone recently, and so I bought this one off of a friend that was no longer working, just for the screws. And so what we did is I actually took it apart. We took out all the insides and filled it with sparkler dust. So let me open up the layer itself here and stretch this out. So here are all of the shots of us trying to light it. We tried sticking a fuse, which kind of worked, and sticking it out the headphone port, but it just didn't have enough oxygen and to really burn. So we ended up just slightly tilting up the screen so that way we could get the flame in there a little bit easier. And then we finally got a decent shot where some sparks are coming out. But this took us a long time to do, and I was like, if we had just added some sparks in Action Essentials, it probably would have looked just as good. Now, this was actually our favorite shot, and we wanted to use it, but it just looked too weird in the final cut. We had sparkler dust and some lighter fluid or something similar like that to light it, and so then it just really started burning up.
Alright, get it off. Get it off.
Okay, I think it's good.
Did you mean to do that?
That's for getting me up so early.
And then, after we were all excited about that, it only ended up making it into the shot for like a few seconds. So we had the zapping going on there, and then just frame by frame, just had the lightning just kind of zap it a couple of times until the flame started dying away, and that's how we got that phone zapping effect. Alright, so moving on to this shot in the parking garage here. So this was one of our first fight scene shoots. So we were still kind of we were still getting used to the flow of how this whole thing worked. And so this shot lingered for a long time. So without the lightning, it just looks ridiculous. There we go. So it just went on for a while, and I was like, okay, what am I gonna do for this? So we tried going to different cutaways, but it just didn't quite work out with the shots that we had. So I just decided, I'm like, well, okay, how about he just goes zap, zap, zap? Because I wasn't about to go and put lightning there that lasted for like 3 whole seconds. It would have looked awful then. So I just wanted to go zap, zip, zap, zap. So the first thing that I did was add the lightning, but it didn't. All this lightning just kind of seemed to get a little bit old after a while, so I figured it was something else. So that's when I started opening up some smoke charges that I got from Action Essentials. So first thing that I did is I tracked the footage. So over here, I put a tracker down, and I just tracked this one portion of the car over here, because this was a point that was in the frame for the whole shot, even after he runs away. So I first applied that tracker, and it was a pretty clean track. So then I went and I applied this to a null that I named tracking null. And so if you see that right here, you can see the null moving right along with the car over there. So then I was able to go in and put in some smoke elements into it. So first off, here's the smoke that we used. I went ahead and masked it out because I didn't like this big like poof that came with the smoke. So I went ahead and added that and then moved it around to get rid of that kind of mushroom cloud kind of look, because if something was blowing up, that would have looked really nice, but I did not like it there. So, and then I brought in the mask and really feathered it so that way I could, since there was camera shake, I wanted the smoke to look like it was there in the room, and when we'd hit the edge of the smoke, I didn't want it to look awkward. So back in the shot here, if I turn on the smoke layer, you can, you'll start to see it kind of shoot up there, but it doesn't track with the footage. See, when you go up, it looks like the smoke gets faster because the smoke is just flat on top of it. So what I did is I parented this to the tracking null. This allowed it so that way wherever the null moves, the smoke would move. Also, if I turn off the video layer, then you can see what the smoke is exactly doing. And it looks pretty ridiculous. I mean, that rectangle there. I also rotated it a little bit. But when you throw it on the footage, you know, it's a lot harder to see the artifacts. That's one thing about special effects, is there's lots of different layers to making something realistic. You know, lightning glow, the camera shake, and lens flares and flashiness. There's a lot. So the more layers that you add onto it, the more elements that you focus in on, then you can tend to get away with a lot more with each element because you just don't notice them if they're all subtle enough. But yeah, so this was another shot that we were like super nervous about using, but we were able to get an acceptable shot with it using this lightning over and over again. Alright, so when we brought everything into Premiere, we wanted to avoid dynamic linking. We've had some problems in the past. I mean, dynamic linking is really nice because you can just click and drag the After Effects composition straight into the project, and whenever you save a change in After Effects, it will save that change in Premiere as well. But we've had problems, especially with exports, especially in big, long, complicated projects, that we just didn't want to deal with that. So what I first did is we had the layer here, and this, well, we replaced with After Effects composition, but then after we sent it to After Effects, I went ahead and undid the effect, so that way we had the effects, the clips we needed in After Effects without having to hunt them back down. And so this is the default, the stock footage. So then we added an adjustment layer, which was the color grading that I added here. So I just used Lumetri that came out last year. So it was really nice. We were able to go in and add all the stuff that we wanted for that. So, and then we added the After Effects layers, which we just exported with black and just went through the whole thing. So, and since I had used the replace with After Effects composition, then when I exported things out, it looked exactly the same when I imported it back into Premiere. I just had to line up the beginning of the clips with the clip. So from there, I went into the effects control and changed the blending mode to screen. This allowed it to show through because it took out all of the blacks but kept the bright stuff. So from there, we were able to I was able to slap them all on, and we were able to color grade the shot independently of the lightning. Because if you added this above the lightning layer, then it would just blow, you know, it blows the lightning out a little bit more than I initially intended, and I didn't want to overdo anything. Alright, so the last thing that I'll leave you guys today is, for the most part, the director really liked my special effects, but there was one point that I really overdid it. Take a look at this shot here, where we had this lens flare on top of the watch when Vince and Sean were battling it out. But what I initially wanted to do was have like little lightning streaks come from it. So I had a lot of fun and just put zaps all over the place and it took me a couple of hours to do this effect, and I was quite proud of it. But then when the director saw it, she was like, this is a little too much. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, want me to tone it down? And she's like, actually, I kind of liked it with just the lens flare. And I was like, So that's what happens with special effects. You gotta be careful not to overdo things and not to throw too much at the audience. So there's really a balance that you really gotta tread along. So if you put in too much and you really want to show off what you can do, it might be a little too much for the audience to deal with. So in the end, the director wanted a more minimalistic style with the context of this film. If I had put in like little zaps here and there, the director may have been a little bit more forgiving for it, but she just wanted the lens flare because she felt like that's all it needed. But yeah, so that's how I did the majority of the special effects for the film. But this doesn't even include all of the things that you guys didn't even notice, like the stuff that we had to erase, whether that would have been like the audio guy getting in the shot, or there was a stain on someone's shirt we had to remove. There was a bunch of stuff that we had to go in and correct in post. But yeah, this probably won't be the last special effects video that I'll be putting up. We're currently working on a new film called Skylar, which will have a few special effects in there as well. So yeah, be sure to stay tuned for those potentially. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again in the next one.